What's up, Red, Orange, and Silver School? My name is Evan. If you didn't know, now you do. Congratulations. I can't wait to meet you one day. Hope it's soon. Praying. So right now we're going to be talking about leadership, one of our core sessions for Super Summer Things. And honestly, it's a really, really cool topic to talk about because we all are leaders. We're all equipped to be leaders. We're all meant to be leaders. We're all meant to influence. And you might be thinking to yourself, who is this girl and why does she think she knows me? Well, I'm Evan, and I think I know you because I think as believers we were all called to be leaders in one way or another. And being a leader doesn't always look the same. Being a leader doesn't always mean that you have to just be this bold, courageous, warrior type, alpha dominant person. It could mean that you sit and calm and still. It could mean you're an introvert. Whatever it looks like, you are a leader because there is always going to be someone looking to you, and there's always going to be someone that you look to. Yep, that's right. So today we're going to be talking about the different perceptions and different ideas about what leadership is. So on this paper, like when we're told to figure things out, it says, how do you define leadership? And so as I was getting ready and prepared, I Googled hey, what is leadership? And it said to lead someone. And I said, great. What is a leader? And it said someone who guides. And I said, well, what does it mean to lead? And it said to be an example and to direct people. And I think that's interesting because if we're looking at leadership as being an example for those that we're around, it's pretty simple for us to understand that leadership can be considered influence. And so some biblical truths for us to discuss today is leadership is influence. In Proverbs 12:26, it says, a righteous person is careful in dealing with his neighbor, but in the ways of the wicked lead him astray. Influence happens in different settings with different goals in mind. Sometimes influence looks like just being someone who starts a trend. Sometimes influence looks like starting a group at your school. Sometimes influence looks like following people to increase the followers that you have. We all have influence if you have social media. If you have any forms of social contact on the media, you will have influence because you're posting things for others to see and to look at. You're hoping to get that affirmation through a like, through a follow, through a comment, whatever that may look like. Even if that's not your priority, you are still achieving that goal. God has placed people in your life specifically for you to influence. Believe it or not, we all have people in our lives who look up to us. That might be a younger sibling, that might be a friend's younger sibling, that might be a random person at the church who you don't even know who admires you. With that in mind, there comes a responsibility for us as believers to walk in Christ, with Christ, for Christ, to promote godly lifestyles for those that we're influencing. That also means our minds need to be aware of who's influencing us. As a leader, we must be a follower. And as a follower, we must be following the proper example. It's super important for us to look up to people who are godly and have godly insights so that we aren't led astray when the time comes. John Maxwell says, if you call yourself a leader and no one is following you, then you're just taking a walk. I think that's super, super funny because I think it's hilarious to be like, if you're a leader with no followers, then how can you be a leader? You're not, right? You have to have a following. But with that, what direction are you influencing those around you? Are you leading people into temptation? Are you leading people into destruction? Are you leading people into a following of Christ? Are you leading people as you're being led by Jesus? Or are you leading people as you're being led by the world? Christian leadership comes from following Christ. Imitate me as I imitate Christ. That's what Paul says to us. Paul was living a life so glorifying to the Lord that he could confidently say, imitate me as I also imitate Christ. And as a Christian leader, we must first come to know Christ personally. You can't lead people to Christ if you don't know Christ. You can't lead people into sanctification if you've never been redeemed by the one who sanctifies. You can't lead people if you've never been exposed to the goodness and response of Jesus. And if you want to be a good leader, you need to be a great follower. In the verses above, we see Paul encouraging people to imitate him as he imitates Christ. He embraces it. He encourages it. He says, this is good. This is true because I am following Jesus. And he's not saying, I'm so amazing, look at me, look at me. But he was so selfless as a leader that he could accurately say to imitate him as he imitated Jesus. And as a Christian leader, Jesus should be the center of our devotion. Christ should be who our life is embraced by. Christian leadership is an overflow of your relationship with Christ. Don't let anyone despise your mouth, but set an example for the believers in speech, in conduct, in love, in faith, and in purity. 1 Timothy 4:12. Leadership doesn't begin when you become older. Boy, I almost fell off the stool. Leadership doesn't begin when you get into college. Leadership doesn't begin when you hit a certain age limit. Leadership begins when you walk into a relationship with Jesus, form a bond with Christ to say, today's the day that I choose to be a leader. You can be a godly example in your speech. You can be a godly example in your conduct, in your love, in your faith, and in your purity as you remain in fellowship with God. And here are some biblical examples. Nathan was faithful in his speech towards David. Enoch walked with God. Hosea was faithful to love Gomer. Abraham had faith even when he was asked to sacrifice his son. And Paul lived and encouraged us to live a life of purity. Dr. Tim Elmore says, it's the baker who spends so much time baking bread for others, he forgets to eat and starve himself. Leaders must feed themselves for personal growth. And as leaders, I think it's quick for us to say, I'm a leader, I don't need to follow. I'm a leader, I don't need help. I know what I'm doing, I'm fine, don't worry about me. Oh, I've got it, I'm a leader. But as leaders, if we're neglecting ourselves, if we're neglecting the Lord in us, how can we lead? How can our life be an overflow if we're not being discipled and poured into? We must, for our spiritual health, for our mental health, and our emotional health. Everybody has the ability to be a leader. Right now, if you're thinking, I don't, it's a lie from the enemy, you do. Because every single person has influence. And as believers, our influence should point others to Christ as we are strictly in relationship with Him. Don't date the world. Don't follow the world. Don't let your flesh consume you. But instead, walk so close with Christ that you influence other people around you to walk closer with Him. That's a leader. That is true leadership. So right now we're going to go through some times of questions. You're just going to write these down and send them into Gatewood, and you're going to move up a color school. It's going to be awesome. The first question is, how would you define leadership? How would you define leadership? The second question, would you describe yourself as a leader? If so, why? And if not, why? The third question, how are you currently using your influence on those around you? You guys, we want to encourage you to be leaders, not so that you can get glorification, but so that you can give God all the glory. We know and we hope that this year you're able to walk closer with Jesus and therefore lead others to Christ. We love you and we will see you guys soon. Bye.